drowning in a sea of alcohol, Jessica Stepanovic's life seemed irreparable. But an unexpected twist shattered her illusion and changed everything. A letter revealed the true extent of her destructive path. It was a turning point, a divine intervention that whispered hope and transformation. The question now lingers: how did Jessica find the strength to rewrite her story and discover a purpose beyond her addiction and take a path towards transformation that begins to speak to the heart of others through the darkness in their eyes? Listen in as Jessica Stipanovic, a writer, author, amazing mother of 3, and wife of 10 wonderful years, shares her overcoming story where God gets all of the glory. Listen in. You're listening to the Mindset School Podcast, episode 32. Hey friends, welcome to the Mindset School Podcast with Peggy Easterling, where we learn to smile authentically from the inside out. Hey Jessica, how are you today?
Hey Peggy, so good to be here. It's honored to be on your podcast for sure.
I met you in this amazing online space, and it's been so good to connect and learn a little bit about you. But today I'm really excited for my audience to get to know you. Do you mind sharing just a little bit about yourself?
Sure, no problem. My name is Jessica. I have a family of 5. My husband and I, we live in Florida. We're actually getting ready in exactly 28 days to celebrate our 10-year wedding anniversary. So I'm really excited about that. I have 3 children. We've been living here in Florida for well over 20 years. I grew up in a town called Colonia and summered in Cape May, New Jersey. And that's where I grew up. And that was my childhood. And now everyone is here. Everyone has moved to warmer weather. So I've got both parents 7 miles away on either side. My brother's here. And this is where we're doing our life now. And I have been a freelance writer in this community for more than 15 years. But writing has always been my talent and my passion.
Wow. I've always enjoyed writing, but I do it for hobby. I don't generally share it with others. Journaling is so good to me, but I love your passion about writing and how you speak about it. Your story has been written out through the years, and it wasn't always a beautiful story. It has things in it that, as you've gone through the years, that it's not always been sunshine and roses. Do you mind starting from the beginning and sharing a little bit about your story?
Sure. So I'm actually working on an up-and-coming memoir, and it's not a chronological straight line from my childhood to my adulthood. I am writing about my early adulthood, where I really had struggles for most of my 20s going into my early 30s. And what that looked like for me was I had to overcome alcoholism. And at that time, I didn't know how to do that or how to put a name on that. But that's how that unraveled. So to go back a little bit, it's not my childhood, because we grew up and I had a great home, and my mom and dad put together a wonderful life for us. My mom was always doing things homemade and handmade, and my dad showed up to everything. I have an incredible brother who was always there. We had great friends. And so I went to high school, I went to college, and I would say at the age of 19, things changed for me. Whether I started drinking up until that point, or I started drinking more at that point, I just know that 19 was a pivotal age. It was as if it's like the lights turned out within me, and I spent the next 8 to near decade trying to turn them back on. And so let me explain that a little. Is like there's two things that I can attribute that to. One is that I knew that the dynamics of our family changed. My parents had been married for 30 years. And when I came back from college 1 year, they had said we're going to get a divorce. So the dynamics of our family and our home shifted. And that, as you would have it, would upset anyone. And so each person individually handled that differently. I remember my brother getting mad and going off to live somewhere and then coming back. But for me, I was real concerned about them. And I started making sure my mom was okay and making sure my dad was okay and making sure my brother was okay. And I think in that process, I began to drink. It would normally be just a regular 19, 20, 21 party thing. Like you just, have more. So it increased then. And in addition to that, I also remember coming home and being at a bar with good friends, and they were having such a good time. And they were talking about just the vacation and the break we were on. And I was just so consumed with what I was going to do with my life because I just felt such a calling in my life and to write a book and to serve. And it was just, and I knew it's from God, and nobody was really talking about that. And I didn't know how to put words to it. He asked me to write a book. I mean, that I don't have the information to fill the pages. What am I supposed to write about? But I knew it was there. And I recently heard somebody say, it was so good. It said, don't get so caught up in the calling that you forget who called you to do it in the first place. And honestly, what I think happened for the next near decade was that I was trying to fit in with the normal flow of those around me. And I already had what I was going to do down. And I just couldn't, I'm just kept trying to fit in somewhere where I wasn't supposed to be. And for me, I don't know when my drinking increased to the point of no return. But as with any true person who suffers from alcoholism, that's exactly what happens. You drink to become more comfortable, and it becomes such that your brain chemistry's changed and your physicalities has changed, and there's no returning from that. So you either put it down or you get increasingly worse. And for me, it got increasingly worse because it is a very progressive disease. And I had not even known that I had it. To me, during those years after that I just described, probably 19, 20, 21, 22, gosh, I didn't know what had happened. I was like a different person. It's like the lights went on and couldn't get them back on. And I couldn't find who I was. I just kept looking for her. I went all over the world, literally looking for where I went or how I can bring myself back. And with little information about alcoholism or any kind of solution on the way back, I just kept seeking alternative solutions. They talk about like alcohol being a physical malady, but it has a spiritual solution. So I was not going in that direction. I was going to endocrinologists and psychologists and psychiatrists and changing locations. I literally traveled to 6 different continents and 11 different states in this one, and seeking a solution outside of myself that could only be found inside of myself within. And I just kept going because I wasn't going to stop. And I kept saying, I'll get better and I'll come back and I'll re-enter my life.
So you felt like your life was on hold and you were trying to find yourself in that space.
Yeah, it was definitely on hold. Yeah, it was on hold. I was just trying to find out what had happened because I wasn't functioning as I should be. I was experiencing all the things that anybody experiences that has like depression, anxiety, these things that just had nothing to do with who I was before. I grew up in a family that said, you can be anything that you want to be. You can do anything that you want. Everything is accessible to you. We will support you. We love you. And then everything stopped. And whether it's a genetic predisposition or it's something that's just acquired, whether you're going to drink or you're going to eat or you're going to use drugs or you're going to gamble or you're going to spend money. So either it was genetically predisposed by my grandfather, I know, had alcoholism. I never saw that with him. His brother did too. So did I have the genetic predisposition to it? I don't know. Did I just go to it and I went to it too much and it altered my physical? So then the only answer was completely to not do it anymore. I don't know. But those were just questions I wasn't asking myself because I thought it was helping me. I said, I'll stop doing this when I'm less depressed. Like, this is helping me. Like, of course, when I'm less aligned, like, when I'm less depressed, I will stop doing this. But what I didn't know about the disease of alcoholism is that every drink that I had put into my body after I crossed that line was not helping me. It was hurting me. And so that went on for quite a long time. And I think I'll just bring it to the very last night because this is exactly why the very last night, there was one particular evening where I believe I went to the store 4 times. And I drove down a side street in my neighborhood, 70 miles an hour, down a small neighborhood street in my town. And when I got home, I just was in no condition. And I was trying to go to sleep, but I couldn't. So I went underneath my bed, and sometimes you'll have a box under there with photos or papers. And I did, and I pulled out what was on top. And I went ahead to read it. And it was a letter from my grandmother's friend to her. And what it was saying was how their family was turned upside down because of what had happened with her granddaughter. And so the letter proceeded to speak about her granddaughter to my grandmother. And it described her, she was an active alcoholic like I was at that time. And her family was pleading with her to go get help. Please, we need you to go get help. And she said finally, okay, I will go. I'm going to go on Monday. I went the weekend in Miami to go do what I want. And then I promise you I will go on Monday. And so what ended up happening was on that Friday, she had gotten into her car to head to Miami. And she had already started drinking. And when she was leaving her neighborhood, she ended up hitting and killing a little girl. So what the letter was describing was how the family was completely devastated because her granddaughter had ended up having this tragedy happen and now is in prison for vehicular manslaughter. So what happened was 2 things in that room that night for me. One, because I just gotten out of that vehicle that I had gotten out of, 2 things happened. One is that the idea that my drinking was just affecting me was now gone. Because it was so very specifically clear that it was not about the next time that I got into a car, I would not be hurting myself. I would definitely be hurting someone else. And that was completely unacceptable to me. And in that moment, I knew that was going to be absolutely true. And so for years, I had drank destructively and lived as such because I had at that point been not knowing anything about the disease of alcoholism. I had been such a failure at getting myself well because nothing was working. And so it was welcome to live in a way that was destructive to me because of that fact. But what was told to me in that room was that it was not going to be me that was going to be hurt. And so in that moment, I knew that was true and that was just not acceptable to me. And the second thing that happened in that room was that God came in and audibly spoke to me. And he said, I'm going to give this to you one more time. Please take it. And it was so clear that I said out loud to him, okay, I will. And that was 18 years ago, and I have not had a drink since. And from that night to present day, there has been so many different things have happened, but some people get delivered. I heard a pastor say once, the most hardened criminal or the most sickened drug addict can be delivered in 1 second flat. And I love that because that happens to people. And to me, yes, that happened in the room and that was the last time I did, but I don't think I was delivered in that room. And I was delivered in a sense, but I had to learn. It shook me for longer than it should have after that, just cravings and such like that, the physicality of it. Whereas I know people so there's some people who get it right away and it's just this spiritual deliverance and it's gone and you're blessed with a new life and you share that. And then there's other people where it happens slowly and it's just this spiritual evolvement that happens that you're committed to because you have seen enough evidence. And so I think that's what happened to me.
The way that God had that letter right there under the bed for you to read, it's so powerful. What an amazing moment to realize, even in that moment that you were driving the car and you had been drinking and you were in that moment, had that not happened, that effect of that letter wouldn't have been the same.
And I haven't thought of that. So I'm sure you just said that. Right. Exactly. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, sure.
Sometimes, though, as Christians, we get upset when their journey doesn't look clean like yours. Like, it was 18 years ago and I never drank again. And I think sometimes as Christians, we don't understand that sometimes people walk out this journey and God delivers them over time. And His grace is there for them the whole way. I thank God that you chose to never take a drink again, but I hear you. The physicality of it was there. I'm sure your body was having physical cravings and it was a choice every single day, every single moment. And sometimes maybe it still is that there is a temptation that comes to you to make a certain decision in that.
Well, I think that's true. And that can deter people too and say, well, that's not going to happen to me. But it was slowly over time for me. It was not in that moment and then I walked completely free the next day. No, I've had the great fortune of being surrounded by incredible people who knew about the disease of alcoholism and who believed in a much deeper way than I was even capable of believing in that moment. And I never looked for miracles in those 10 years because I believed they were not meant for me. So why would I be looking for them? And what these incredible people that had just handed me and just hand over hand, just teaching me and just showing me and said, no, they are meant for you. And now this is yours. And this is how you're going to keep this. And I think what's really important is the spiritual component is the hope component. It really is. But what's also so important is I think I got so lost on why it happened for so many years that I think it really delayed me getting well. There's a huge stigma attached to alcoholism, a social stigma. I think the American Medical Association, I think they deemed it a disease in 1956. It's not like we go to the doctor and there's an annual that says how many things. It's still not something that's completely acceptable. It's almost like it's not a personal failing. It's a physical disease. And I think that keeps a lot of people away because they think, if I don't believe in God, how am I ever going to get clear of this? They think they're a bad person. They think I had this beautiful woman. Her name was Olga. she was really a mentor to me in a lot of ways. And she always said, "You're not a bad person trying to get good." She said, "You're a sick person trying to get well." And she helped me to do that. And I'm so grateful for that. She passed away this year, but she just lives on in me, because you have those people who just, you know, believe in you and they teach you how to. And what ends up happening, once that happened to me that evening, there were so many things that happened in the next year to develop and build my faith that I would have never had expected. But I feel like they were placed there that just to give me more evidence that, hey, God is real. That happened. He is now your main focus. You can walk with him. He's got you. And now you can go ahead and finish what you were supposed to do. And it would come in ways where if I didn't have enough money, something would arrive. If I didn't have something to eat, the doorbell would ring and the hot steaming food would be there. There just was not a place where he was not. And I learned how to start looking for him. You can pray all we want, but if we don't pray and then pay attention, then we're going to miss a lot. And I don't want to miss anything anymore, because see, I spent like 10 years in darkness that I don't believe. If you look at my life before having that 10 years in the darkness, I don't want to go back there. I don't want to go back and view life through that same lens. And I think the real gift is that you just don't have to. You can continue to move forward. There's not this big thing on my shoulders that says, "Oh, I'm an alcoholic. It'll never be okay." No, that happened and it's done. And I am okay. And now I need to continue to establish my relationship with God, continue to reach out when I'm not acting right, or not to say that I'm going to go do that again, because it's not really about that. It's just about, I think there was an altar once, so I just love it. I mean, this is just what it's down to for me. There's the whole drama of the days. You're either you're making decisions that you're going to be walking toward God, or you're going to be making decisions that are going to have you walk away from Him. So what's it going to be? And this is in how we treat people. It's in how I speak. It's in the decisions that I make. It's in my vocational decisions. It's in what I'm willing to share here and what I'm not. Do I want to talk about this publicly? No, I haven't for 18 years. But there comes a time where I thought, well, that's about you. Me keeping it to myself is about me and keeping myself safe. And what people see when they look at me clean and clear. But what's more important to me today and for the next chapter of this whole life that I get to live is that I can step over that and say, I'm not writing this book about me. I'm writing it for you. I'm writing it for someone else. It's not for me. That's how I can do it. That's how I can sit here and talk about it. Because just witnessing a lot of other people do the same thing, I thought I wanted to make sure that I wasn't violating any kind of tradition in which I was brought back to a life that was as good as I have it today. I wanted to make sure that I was like honoring myself and the recovery that I was given. And for a long time, that kept me very quiet, because I really, truly believe like it's an honor to be where I am today and a gift. And I wanted to make sure I was just doing what I was supposed to do. But I think the greater calling is to just not be afraid, to have less fear about it. And I went and saw people do it. And I say, if they can do it, I can do it. And with my friends and family and stuff, but it's not really for them. It's for people that I don't know. It could be for one person. But so it doesn't really matter to me anymore in that sense, but that's still a process, and that's new.
That's so beautiful. I relate to that so much, especially the part where you say it's not for my family. It never is. It's for that person that's out there, that's listening right now, that needs to hear this story And whenever I shared my story, I had the same sentiments. It's about the person that needs the story. And that's what discipleship is about. Sharing, the Bible says we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. Your testimony matters. Your story matters. That's why I do this podcast, because God's a redeeming God, and He redeemed your life and He redeemed your story. And now you're going to use your story so that He can redeem someone else's life and He can redeem someone else's story through your story as you share. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I talk about walls and masks a lot, and the walls and masks that we hide behind, and how important it is to tear them down. And from what I hear, you tore yours down when you listened to the voice of God, and then you allowed yourself community in your life. Do you mind telling me a little bit more about that community support that you had?
Sure. So, yeah, after that night in my home, there was one particular woman who was from up north that I love dearly. And she just is just such a light. And there was never one phone call that she never answered. For me, for that decade, she always answered the phone. And so she was the first person I called that next morning. And I said, okay, I'm done. And she said, okay, we know what to do. And so I just was surrounded by people who really were versed in what the disease of alcoholism was and what was necessary to overcome it, and that it was not going to be easy, but it was going to be possible. And I had to get around people who were willing to tell me the truth all the time and wouldn't accept anything less from me. And there were no walls and masks. The friends that I made in the last 20 years, near 20 years, we just don't live with them on it. And I think that's why we can continue. And also, I feel like there's not a lot of people who make it forever. And I write a lot about those people in my book because I feel like their lives and their lives lost should be honored. And when you're around a lot of great people who believe in you, it's not to say that they didn't have that. But I think the power of community, especially in a recovering setting, is absolutely essential to the long-term success of anything. And that doesn't just have to be for alcoholism. It could be for trauma. It could be for anything. It's saying, hey, our lives may look different, but we have a commonality that is going to forever connect us. And that may forever like have us bump off sometimes, and in how we live our lives. So we are here and you'll help you navigate this. And I think I see a lot of that online with community and stuff. And I think that was the last point that made me say, yeah, you know what? I am going to say this because this book is coming out anyway and it is okay to talk about. Because I saw all the greatness of it and the beauty of it and the courageous people getting out there and not saying, hey, this happened to me to highlight themselves, but saying, hey, this happened to me. I know a way out. Why don't you come in? We'll do this together. And just communities were born. And what an act of generosity to use your hardship to make someone else's life start again. I just don't think there's any other better way to use your time. And I see that's what you're doing. And I see so many people doing that. And I mean, it's an honor that I'm sitting here because I almost lost my life so many times. So I can sit here and keep quiet, or I can sit here and share a little bit in hopes that maybe one sentence fits someone, or, I'm not going to build a community around this, but I just want to write my book. But these communities that I see springing up are just incredible and essential and a great use of the internet.
Amen. Amen. It's whenever I meet up with the Mindset School ladies, it's my favorite time of the week, and there's nothing like it. Watching people being vulnerable and authentic and sharing the muck, the messy, being sweaty to share, even when it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable to be real and say, hey, look, I messed up here. But guess what? I want to be better and I want to do better. And that's why I'm here today. And they keep coming back. And the beauty of that is that's exactly where God wants us to be. Just vulnerably accepting Him in replace of where they've been yesterday or 5 minutes ago. It doesn't matter. I accept you right now in this moment. And you'll meet me right here, right now in this moment, every single time. Just like that woman that answered the phone for you every time, but even more because He's a perfect God and He loves us irregardless of how many times we failed, we messed up, we let ourselves down, but He loves us anyway. It's beautiful, the redeeming power and love that He has for us. Thank you, Jessica, for sharing your story. I'm sure there's someone out there that's listening and they've struggled with alcoholism. They've struggled with that exact disease. And maybe they didn't hear an audible voice and they've struggled with this and they've tried to accept this on a daily stance in their journey. What would you have to say to that man or woman listening?
Well, I would like to say that I think something that's extremely important is when I talk about honoring the people that did not make it. I say that because I also know a lot of people who almost did not make it. And the thing is to not give up. And so I'll give you an example. This is how I came to the working title of my book. There was this one girl that I saw one time, and she was sitting across from me. And she was in a really bad way. She had dark circles under her eyes and she had like track marks on her arm. And I was looking at her and she looked up at me. Now, normally somebody who is in a state like that is going to look down, but she did not look down. She maintained my gaze. And I knew when I was looking at her that she needed help. And she was in a state of desperation that was bigger than her. And so afterwards, I went over to her and I said, hey, do you need anything? Can I get you help? And she said, I need a ride home. And I said, okay, well, come on, I'll give you a ride home. And she asked me to stop at the store to drive through and get her some food. And I did. And we got to her driveway and I'll never forget this because I looked down at her wrist and there was marks on it that were new. And I said, well, when did you do that? And she said, I did it last night. It didn't work, but I know how to do it. And I said, well, you don't have to do it. And she gave me a she just leaned over and we just had this moment. And she gave me this big kiss on my face. It was a real intense kiss on my cheek. And I just hugged her so tight. And I remember when I drove home, I sat in my driveway to collect myself before I got into my house. And I prayed to God and I said, thank you so much for not letting me give up. And also, thank you for seeing that girl through. Because that is what happened there. And I don't think it went any other way. And the thing is, that's what I thought of the title of my book. And I thought light shines brightest in a dark room. And that's just a working title, but it made me, I wrote that down that day because I knew she was in the darkest place she'd ever be, but I knew that she could find light. And there's just one other incident that happened. If you don't mind me just sharing it, is that my husband and my kids were in the car. This was less than a month ago. And we were driving and, it's a town called DeLand here. And we were at a convenience store because we were going to go to Bee Springs and it was closed. So we went to the convenience store to pull over, to reroute, figure out our day. And the kids were in the back. And I saw and my husband saw her too, there was a woman smashed between the dumpster and the side of the building. And he said, well, come on, let's go. Because we were going to, and I said, wait, there's a girl there. And for last 10 years, I haven't been really in those spaces because I have little kids and I haven't presented myself in those spaces for so many reasons. But that particular day, I said, well, wait a minute, that girl, just something could have happened to her. She needs help. And he said, no, we're not, we can't do that right now. And I said, well, you've got to. And he said, no, we can't do that now. So we drove away. And when we got to the next parking lot, I said, we're going to have to go back. And so he said, okay, we'll go back. So we went back and I said, don't worry, I'll just stay in the car. I'll just jump out. He gave me a bottle of water and I went up to her because she looked young to me. And I went up to her and I didn't know if she had been hurt that night and she was completely disheveled and out of her mind. And she had a big bruise on her face and blisters on her ankles. And I looked at her and I said, hey, I said, are you okay? And she said, yeah, okay. And I said, are you sure? And I said, and I spoke to her. And why I'm telling you this is because when I drove away from her, I spoke to her and I just gave her a couple of things to do. And when I drove away, sure, I was sad. I had big tears dropping out of my eyes. I knew no matter how disheveled she looked or how beat up the side of her face was, or how many blisters she had, or how sick she was, I knew that girl could get well because I had seen it so many times. So it's not like a matter of, because he just, when it is your time, he will contact you. And you just have to be open and you still have to be here. So you cannot give up. You have to hold it. When you want to let go the most, that is your cue to hold on the tightest, because that is when you're going to get contacted. That's what I believe. And I think that's what happened with that girl. I'd like to believe that. So it doesn't bother me when someone calls upset or with a big problem or something terrible that has happened, because I know that it's going to be okay. They just still need to be here and to believe in something that's going to help them overcome that. And then they'll come to call my name. So,
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Wow. Thank you. Amazing. I want to make sure, because there's going to be listeners listening today, and they're going to want to connect with you. How can they connect and make sure that when your book comes out, that they can get it? Because I know this is just a little piece of so many amazing pieces to your story. This is just a part of it. How can we reach out to you and get connected?
The number one way to do that is to go to my website, which is www.jessicastipanovic.com. And there, the easiest way is to sign up for a monthly newsletter, because that's going to give you updates about the release of the book and what's happening with the editorial process and where I'm at, and maybe do some working titles. And it just once a month, the email will come out up and until that happens. So that's the easiest way. You just go on and put your email in. It's a monthly newsletter sign up. And there's also something on their website that's a 7-day happiness challenge. It's like a downloadable workbook anyone can take, get printed out just to get you started over. There's a couple of resources on there. There's some free resources for writers on there. So I just share everything freely. It's on the website. I'm happy to share more.
That's amazing. I am going to get that book as soon as it's available. So I'm going to go make sure I'm on your newsletter if I'm not.
Sure. Thank you so much, Peggy.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure that all your information is in the show notes below. So y'all make sure you reach out to Jessica. Thank her for sharing her story. Check out her newsletter. Make sure you get on that list so you can go grab that book as soon as it hits the shelf. You're going to want it. You're going to want it in your hands and read this amazing story in all the ways that Jessica has shared her story today. We're grateful for it. Thank you so much. And
thank you for having me.
As always, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. If you like what you heard, I'd love to know. Leave us a review and share with a friend that could use an overcoming story so they can move closer to their purpose for their lives by renewing their mind the way God intended. Hey friends, thank you for listening. You're now done with step 1 of growing together at the Mindset School. Head over to themindsetschool.net and grab my free download where I share 5 tips when you can't hold it together anymore and continue your journey to smiling authentically from the inside out.